I have some time before my next session, my Reiki session. So I thought I would see if I can say something articulately enough to share on my podcast about emotions, because last time I talked about thoughts and I talked about the way we can step back and release thoughts, not identify with them because they're actually not even ours. They're part of a program of what we could call the ego. You could have a different word for it. And by beginning to not identify as though they are mine, I realize I don't have the same responsibility for doing anything about them or responding to them, following them, going down their rabbit holes. But I wanted to talk about emotions also as a separate talk because emotions can feel so intense. They actually are, create feeling and sensation in our body. And so it can be one thing to ignore a thought, but what about ignoring an emotion, like an emotion of fear or sadness, or anger, the intense emotions especially. And the light has gotten weird. It's a little darker. Um, Let me change this. Hang on. There. So, but the thing is, emotions are a program. And I've been dealing with a personal situation lately that's given me a lot of opportunity to investigate the subject. So, what I've noticed is that emotions and thoughts work in tandem, but emotions are kind of like the Uber program. They're the master program, I think. And what I mean by that is I might be able to quiet my mind and not believe my thoughts, but it's way harder to not believe my emotions because they have physiological repercussions and they make, our cortisol go up and our fight or flight response kick in and heartbeats go up or down and they make us blush and they make us clenched in our stomach or our head or our back or wherever. And they're like a assault on the person that we think we are. And that means like the physical body, but even more than that, they like um, they can be like a soundtrack to our life. So watch a movie, even a scary movie with no sound on, and how scary is it? Turn on Jaws and then, turn off the sound and you don't get to hear, was it John Williams who was the composer for the very iconic Jaws theme? And if you don't hear that, are you really that moved by all the scenes? I mean, it's a fake shark, so they did pretty well, but in their special effects efforts, but especially for the 70s. But still, it's harder to be all worked up about things without the soundtrack in a movie. And it's harder to be worked up in life without emotions. And if you've noticed when an emotion comes over us, it's not just, random sensations in our body. It has a lot of meaning. So that's kind of like those other thoughts that come with it, you know. Um, we feel, so it's like, I used to work with pain people, pain patients or clients in hypnosis. I don't really do it anymore very much, but I would explain that it's not really the sensations that are troubling us most of the time. It's our interpretation. So we can have hurt or pain without suffering. So if you had, I would give this analogy. If you had a sudden feeling of, something hitting your face, something slightly sharp and maybe cold, and just doing this all over, kind of almost stinging a little bit, and you were sitting in your armchair, you might become very distraught and have, you know, emotions. You'd have a story start to run, and you would have a lot of fear come up. You'd get a lot of trigger around what is happening to me. Am I having an allergic reaction to something? What's going to happen next? Am I going to close my throat, or am I losing my mind or, whatever it is. But if you had the exact same sensations and you were on a mountain in the snow and you were skiing downhill and you had those stinging feelings, you wouldn't suffer, or you wouldn't even feel it as pain. It would feel like you wouldn't even know it, your brain wouldn't notice it because you would filter that out. We're filtering out things all the time because your focus would be on the hill, and your only emotion or feeling would be probably exhilaration and joy doing what you like. So emotions come with a lot of interpretation that this is bad. We'll talk about negative emotions. So it's a program that has a lot of underlying assumptions that something is going wrong. And it activates just like a program. Something happens to trigger the response of the emotion. And then the emotion goes into activated mode. The program is now turned on, and all kinds of chemical changes in the body happen. And also, a lot of file drawers open up in the mind, like stories about the past, stories about the future, stories about who I am in relationship to the past and the future. And, we see images. So we imagine maybe the worst case scenario, or um, many, many different stories. And so actually the stories then feed the emotion. And also now we have tons of thought involved. So now mind is just going berserk, and this is where we can end up doing what I call, running the marathon in the closet, where you just go around and around and around and around. So motions and thoughts now are like they're tag teaming it. So more thought, more feeling, more thought, more feeling, more thought, more feeling, more thought, more feeling. And then usually we come to some place of, I got to do something about this. So now we're going down the rabbit hole completely. We've been totally hijacked. And I like that word. I call it's like parasitical energy that wants to hijack us, because that's the only way it lives. And while we still keep feeding it, it will still have a life in us. It's not a real life, it's a phantom kind of thing, but we keep giving it our power by feeding it, by believing it. So now we're going to take action and we're doing it out of that fear and we're doing it out of those, thoughts. And this would be kind of what the Course in Miracles would say is the insane mind. We're basically not thinking, we're just activated in a program. And the thoughts and the feelings and then the action that comes out of it, they're all part of the same thing. And that's a very reactive state to be in. It's not, it's very dangerous, really. We make a lot of very poor decisions when we're in that state. In fact, I read somewhere recently that our IQ actually goes down when we are emotionally activated. Yeah. So we get dumber. So just like thoughts aren't our thoughts, the program of an emotion, the Uber program, emotions, from my perspective as a Course in Miracles student, or, also just having, you know, in, investigated them for myself and also, just all the learning I've done from a lot of non-dual teachers, they're not really our thought. They're not ours either. They're in the sense that they're not part of who we truly are. They're a phenomenon that come and go, that comes and goes. But we're always here when they come and when they leave. We're still here. And so, one of the things I say to everybody, including myself, is don't make permanent decisions based on a temporary feeling. We can get very carried away, literally carried away in the program. And the other part to that uh, saying that I use is any good decision that happens will still be here once the program is over. When it has subsided, played itself out, and there are ways that we can be with them to accelerate that process. But if something good as a decision was part of the mix of what occurred to us, it'll still be here. It's okay to wait and see how you feel after. So what are some, if this is making sense to you and if you would like to have fewer 911s, emotional 911s, what are some ways that you can work with them when they arise? Well, in the Course in Miracles, and I'll always keep coming back to that because I know it best. One thing that always will come to me is I'm not upset for the reason I think. It's one of the early workbook lessons. And so that's implying that there's a choice. And the choice I'm making now is actually hurting me. And it has nothing to do with whatever is happening or not happening. That the choice is something happening in my mind. And therefore, the solution, the real solution, is also going to be in my mind. One of the things that makes this hard is that we have a faulty belief, most of us, that our emotions, our negative emotions, are somehow going to get us what we want. It's like a way we've always been manipulative and been manipulated. So we learn it, early, early, early. When something's not going our way, we cry. And sometimes our well-meaning parents, and I guess I shouldn't say it quite like that because there would be cases where it would be very appropriate to step in. But anyway, sometimes the world responds very quickly and we get what we want and we're all better. And so imagine that kind of going into our primitive brain, or not brain, but primitive world understanding, making a hard, stamped principle to live by. When I get upset, the world changes in my favor. So that's pretty deep conditioning. And then we learned it on the other side too. We learned that if mom or dad was angry at us, we would, shape up. We would, do what they wanted us to do. So emotions served a purpose. They kept us in line and they kept us getting what we want. And so they became a huge part of our strategy for living. And we had no reason to question whether they were really ours or not, or whether they were good or not. They just were. It's like they're part of my self. So, I have two hands and two feet and I have emotions. And they seem more like part of me really than thoughts do, because thoughts, I can entertain a new thought. I can quiet my mind and go to sleep and not have any thoughts. There's more of a distance between who I am and my thought, you know. My intellect could be a tool, but my emotions feel like me because like I said, they strike me. They're pushing different buttons. They're also pushing the thought player, play the recording on all the horrible thoughts now that I'm feeling anger. But they're pushing other buttons too. They're pushing the, you know, queasy feeling in the stomach button and the head tightening button and um, the movies of all the horrible things button. And they're jamming. It's like they jam all of them at once. So they're they're more challenging, especially at the beginning. So one of the things that I think we have to be willing to do is want, we have to prioritize our peace over everything else because emotions are only able to take us away because, again, like I said, we think they're going to get us somewhere. But if we use them as, again, engine lights on the dashboard to see what am I valuing here over my peace, then they become a tool that I can use for investigation. And I can at least make a choice because maybe my preference is so strong. I just think this person should get well and they should never die. And I'm just going to be angry and afraid until that happens. And I'm not interested in freedom. I just want that. I mean, at least that would be an honest response. And you can be angry as long as you want and see if it helps. It's kind of like we have to work with ourselves like that, really honestly and directly. I could be happy right now no matter what's going on, if I didn't insist that everything go my way right now. If I didn't have such a negative relationship with things that are outside of my control. And so then I could also ask myself if I'm ready to just not have a future. Byron Katie, I love what she said. If you want terror on purpose, get a future. There's a lot of truth to that. Try to be afraid if you have no future. You're just in this moment, and this is all you'll ever have is this moment. So I think strong emotions require reflection in a different way. They require me to ask myself, what am I invested in? And is it worth the cost of my peace? And also, is my lack of peace buying me anything helpful? And we can have a lot of righteous rage, we call it. And certainly the world gives us plenty of opportunities for that to come up strong. And, you know, but you know what? It, it's gonna find something to come up. It could be just, if it weren't something you read in the headlines, it could be something that you heard about happening in your family or in your neighborhood, or it could be something happening in your own body. You know, I mean, righteous rage is just flat out ordinary old rage. And it's looking for food. And there's no real such thing as expressing our emotions to get them out. That is a deception. Expressing our emotions is maybe if we need to do it for ourselves so that we understand what they are if we're repressing them. But that's, you know, quiet work, in your journal or something, or maybe just in your pillow on your walk in the woods. We do need to take an inventory of what is going on, and sometimes it looks like this, upheaval of energy that we call emotion. But once it's been identified and we're clear on it, the mistake would be that, I have the right and the obligation now to, express it to others or honor it. We can't really get it out in the scream therapy thing that I think was big, I guess maybe in the 60s or 70s or something. I don't think it probably did any good, unless for the people that were so repressed, it helped them realize, oh, I'm angry. But then continuing that serves no helpful purpose. There's exceptions to everything, but I'm just saying, in general, as a general rule, expressing emotions isn't a way to get rid of them. It's just a way to keep them alive. Ken Wapnick, one of my, my basically my primary Course in Miracles teacher, he told a story one time that he had a very angry mother. He grew up with someone who was very angry, and he himself was, even from an early age, a very good letter writer. And so she was forever having him write her letters, her angry letters for her. And he said, I wrote angry letters for years, and it didn't get rid of her anger or make it less. So that's the trick. Indulging our emotions is a flawed strategy. It seems like it's going to do something that it can't do. It can't make them go away. Maybe momentarily, like we have the phenomenon of the row night and then the makeup, and then a week goes by and we do it again with our spouse, right? Or our sibling or whatever. But that's perpetuating the cycle of that. So our emotions, we don't sustain them off usually for, infinite amounts of time. They have to have their peak and then, they get, so the activation kind of has a crescendo moment and then that energy goes back down into more of a dormant phase. But, it's still subliminal inside the, less conscious awareness. And that anger is still filtering and interpreting what we see. And and so all that interpretation and filtering that goes on while it's dormant is just setting itself up for the next explosion. And so it never really gets better. And so we just live in these cycles. And then we say, well, I need a new job. I need a new life. I need a new spouse or whatever. But the thing is, we're valuing these emotions. We're saying that they're part of me and they deserve to be honored and that they have some meaning and that the meaning is about me being mistreated usually or someone we love being mistreated. I'm not saying that on the level of our world that there aren't people getting mistreated and all that, but I'm saying that the emotions are engaging us in the system. So if someone does something that's not very nice to me and isn't respectful, and I allow my emotions because I feel that they are justified, then I'm actually now in the system with them. Victim, victimizer. It takes two. So if you want your righteous rage, just realize you are now part of the whatever dynamic that you're against. You're engaged. You're part of it. It can't happen without you. So what do we do with emotions? Well, you know, it's different things depending on what's going on and how core it is to my whole psychological self. Certain things, the guy that cuts me off on the freeway, maybe in by my makeup, that's an easy thing to let go of that anger. It's always some kind of letting go. Maybe if it's something else, then I can question what am I valuing more than my peace and I can let it go. But if it's something that's, just core, like a core issue, abandonment or whatever, and that's your thing. I mean, everybody has their own core issues. Then I think what we often are needing to do is just be with it, welcome it, and be very silent as it, you know, is kind of trying to take us down. Very silent, no action. This is what I think of as the Buddha under the Bodhi tree story, where he has to be assaulted by all these different temptations and not flinch, not move. And so sometimes I tell people, you got to just say, come in and do your worst at a certain point because emotions are an uber program in the sense that, they manipulate all the other programs in you, or they have them kind of, they're like puppets, marionette on the string puppet. And they bully you. Yeah. So at some point we got to face the bully. And, I love the metaphor of the Karate Kid movie. Hopefully we are developing our techniques so that we can finally face the bully. And we find that in the heat of that battle, so to speak, as I'm letting my righteous rage or my fear and sorrow or over abandonment come on in and do your worst, I remember my wax on and my wax off, and I realize, oh, all this time I've been actually prepared for this, being prepared for this moment. I do have some skills. I do have my meditation and my beliefs and my presence. And so I'm going to lean into all of that. This present moment is enough. And I'm going to allow this thing to unfold, whatever this is. And I'm not going to budge. And I'm not going to judge it or myself. I'm going to just allow. And that lack of resisting it does magic, you know, that welcoming it, not because it's fun or pleasant, but because we want to reclaim the part of ourselves that's been hijacked by this energy, by this tendency, by this thing that is not who we are, but has been able to masquerade as who we are, hijack who we are, put us in a trance. So I say, you could be with it like it's a small child having a massive temper tantrum. So you're a mom or a dad and you're a wise one and you don't let it hurt anything, don't let it, hit someone or you, but also don't judge it and just patiently allow it to exhaust itself. You might need to take time away to do that. I know that when I get upset with my husband, which can happen, not as often, but it can happen. I know when it's not okay to talk. Oh, the mind has a million things to say, but it's not a time to talk. There's no communication in that kind of talk. So it's a time for me to go be with the energy of whatever it is. And then at the end of that, it could take hours or days. If there is something to be said that's helpful, I'll be clear about that. Often, though, there's nothing that is comes. There's really me just having to go through a letting go process of all my desires and expectations. This is called in shamanic or other awakening circles. This is called dying daily. This is when we are taking responsibility for the thing that used to animate our lives and cause our suffering and suffering for others in the sense that we didn't, I think everybody's responsible for their own suffering, but I can perpetuate and create challenges for people, or I can be a resource of help, a peaceful presence that helps lift them. But as I die to the thing inside of me, that's the ego, basically, all the psychological energies of, all the neediness, or as the Course in Miracles calls it, all the specialness. And so it can take us very deep because sometimes we're threatened at an existential type of level, and that's where what do we really want? It gets to be a very in our face kind of question. Do I want to be right? Do I want it my way? Or do I want peace? Do I want freedom? Lester Levinson would use the word freedom. And it's freedom from this thing. So, yeah, the word neediness is really echoing in my mind right now. I think that emotions and neediness go hand in hand. So, are you ready to go without your needs? And that's a very unpopular idea because we're supposed to be deserving of our needs, right? So I'm not talking about, you know, sleep and decent food and clear water and all that. I'm talking about because in our world, if you're listening to this and have internet access on a computer or a phone, you probably have enough of those things. I'm thinking more like needing respect or to be treated a certain way or taken care of in a certain way, acknowledged in a certain way, honored for something about you, that kind of thing. It's the psychological stuff. So are we ready to go without those needs? Those those are very strong desires. And the thing is, the thing that desires them is never satiated. Have you noticed? I mean, it's like I loved a story Muji shared one time with somebody. who was talking about something probably related, and he just said, you know, I could every day I could tell you I love you. And I could do that for 1,000 days. And then on the 1,001st day, you could say, Muji, do you love me? And I could say, well, and that would be the one that you remember. Because this thing doesn't want to be done. This is part of the seeking mechanism, these needs, seeking to get these needs met. And that's the ego, the seeker. So you can't feed it enough to make it go away. The more you feed it, the bigger it gets. The more of a bully it becomes. So emotions and thoughts are programs. Emotions are like the Uber program, the marionette, what do you call them? Puppet master. And it's our work to release them, to face them, to bring presence to them and to own them and to dissolve them. And as we do that, we dissolve the seeker. And yes, it goes for good emotions too, in the sense that good emotions are like a setup for the bad emotions. So for every high, there's a low. Yay, I won the lottery. Boo, I got the taxes. Yay, I got asked to be married. Boo, he got sick and died. It's just, it's part of the future. It's part of judgment. It's part of neediness. And it seems to give us this instant shot of endorphins if we're having a good emotion, but the crash always will come. And it's a false experience. You know, it's like I said, it's a program. The good emotions come and go. So I'm not suggesting that you try to, you know, remove yourself from life so you can never have an emotion. No, you got to live your life. You can't disengage. I've seen people try to do that. They just, they kind of go weird. So if you're getting weird, maybe you're trying too hard in the wrong direction. It's quiet, ordinary work. So, but then when the emotions come, you just don't have to take them that seriously and give them that much power. And if they come and they really hijack you, like usually the really intense negative ones will do, we just talked about, those take some careful, quiet facing and investigating. What am I hanging on to? What part of me needs to be dying right now? Let it die on the vine. It's not real because who you are is real and you'll still be here when it's gone. So, peace is a good feeling. It's quiet. It's a relaxed presence. It's an allowing. It's love with no object. It's a good thing. We underestimate the value of peace. I think that's what I have to say for right now, and I hope this is helpful.